Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners YouTube Live. My name is Brandon Drum. I'm here with Parker Thune, Spencer Forsythe on the board. And off season, nah. You got portal talk, you got hoops talk, you got recruiting, big junior days coming up. There's lots to talk about around the world of college football. And with all the coaching carousel movement, and the fact that the coaches are out on the road now, we've got a lot we can discuss here today, folks. Glad you guys are joining us here. Parker, before we get things going, man, I know we've talked a lot. How you doing? And also, let's do the ad read. Let's get it out.
Alternative, but its worth doesn't start and stop there. It also supports cardiovascular health, athletic performance, and healthy blood pressure. It comes in a palm-sized packet, just like a pre-workout mix, and all you have to do is mix it into 6 to 8 ounces of water, wait 45 minutes, and watch the magic unfold. Here are the game changers. All ingredients have been assessed in peer-reviewed journals, and all ingredients have been studied and researched in humans. You'll never go back to prescription or over-the-counter drugs after trying Joy Mode, which contains clinically supported doses of arginine nitrate, L-citrulline, Panax ginseng, and vitamin C. So, want to see your confidence skyrocket? Go to usejoymode.com for 20% off with code INSIDER. That's 20% off and free shipping with code OU Insider at usejoymode.com. Joy Mode, ingredients with integrity. All right, let's talk ball. We got a lot to cover.
Yeah, big junior day coming up. Obviously, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about that. I think first, bearing the lead, the transfer portal. I think we've got to talk about that first. Damn. Like, it's just like what has happened over the last week. We thought the transfer portal was crazy, like leading up to all this, and there was a lot of craziness going on. Ridiculous numbers being thrown out for some of the more, I guess, highly sought after players. Some of the numbers you just look at and you're like, there's no way, like no blue bloods are going to go throw a bunch of money up like that, and they haven't. Like, if you've noticed, it's been, and I'm not saying Ole Miss is a bad program because it's not, but it's not Ohio State, it's not Oklahoma, it's not Georgia or Alabama or anybody like that. So the way Tennessee and Ole Miss operate are completely different than how those programs operate, right, Parker? Like that,
Yes.
they operate completely different. And so, um, it's just gotten some of the numbers that have been thrown out there for some of the targets. I mean, Zalance Hurd, we won't get into the exact number, but it was stupid. Like, the dude would have been making more than coordinators. Power 5 coordinators. Like, that is insane what they're offering some of these kids. And I just don't, that's not sustainable. Number one, that's not sustainable. You can't keep doing that. And number two, I threw something out there today, Parker, and I want to talk about this tweet. And we talked about it over the phone. And it kind of woke some people up a little bit because everybody's like, you saw the responses. Everybody's like, I'll take A. I'll take it. Well, A was Oklahoma. And I named what they've done in the portal, what they've done in recruiting over the last 3 years, right? And then I named B, I believe, was Ole Miss, and C was Michigan. Nobody chose the champs, which I thought was funny. And yet here they are. But obviously they had a lot of, COVID seniors and all that still on their roster. I think they're going to take a big dip. And I think that's why you see Harbaugh kind of dipping his toes back in the NFL a little bit, because he knows he's probably not going to be any higher than he is right now on the want list for a while, because they haven't really recruited like OU. They haven't portaled like OU. And then you saw Ole Miss, where they're just second across the board in the portal, but they could barely get in the top 20 and top 25 in recruiting. And so sustainability, everybody's like, I'll take sustainability. You take, I guess my point is, Parker, you take the logo and the name of the university away and you actually throw the facts out there. Oklahoma doesn't look that bad in how they're handling things.
No, they don't, Brandon. And look, it's a conversation we've had a zillion times before.
Oh
Is that
yeah.
I still see people on social media saying, well, if Oklahoma doesn't do this and this and this and spend XYZ amount in the transfer portal, then they're not going to be able to compete with this school and that school and this school. Look, in the last 5 years, there have been two programs head and shoulders above the rest in college football, and those programs have been Alabama and Georgia. And props to Michigan for claiming a national title this year. Any and all asterisks aside, they went 15-0, and that's impressive. They deserve props for that. But over the last 5 years, looking at total body of work, Alabama and Georgia rise above the rest. And the common denominator between those two programs is that they have truly elite coaching. There is virtually no question whatsoever that those two programs have the best coaching staffs, top to bottom, in all of college football. And that tweet you put out, Brandon, whether you intended it to or not, I think what it illustrated is that regardless of how well you recruit, regardless of how well you do in the portal, coaching still matters more than anything else. And that is why my firm opinion in all of this is that you don't have any reason to fret as an Oklahoma football fan if you trust that your athletic department, your athletic director has assembled a coaching staff that is top to bottom excellent and has the potential to be elite once you get some continuity for multiple years at a time. And I another you look at the, and we talked about the common denominator between Alabama and Georgia, but look at the common denominator between all the schools that have thrown around giant sums of money via NIL, whether on the recruiting trail or in the transfer portal, Brandon, whether that's Ole Miss or Tennessee or Arkansas or Miami or Texas A&M, most infamously, right? What do all of those programs have in common? Well, they've just kind of been also rans in college football for quite some time. Not terrible, but never great, never top tier, always seemingly knocking on the door of the upper echelon of the sport and never able to get there. And so what I would imagine is the philosophy is, well, okay, if we can dole out 7, 8, 9, $10 million and bring in the dudes to completely revamp our roster such that there isn't a noticeable talent gap between us and Alabama and Georgia, that's going to get us there. That's going to get us over the hump. That's going to get us where we want to go and in contention for a national championship. Well, guess what, Brandon? Coaching still matters.
Yeah.
You can have all the talent. You can have all the dudes, the Jimmies and Joes, as it were. But I don't think there's a better example of this phenomenon than Washington this past year. Washington got to the national championship game because Kalen DeBoer is a really freaking good football coach, and he knows how to surround himself with the right people. Washington did not get to the national championship game because they had a ridiculous blue chip ratio or because they backed up the Brinks truck in the transfer portal. No, they played for a national championship because Kalen DeBoer, if you are strictly looking at wins and losses, is one of the most successful college football coaches of the past 20 years.
I mean, yeah, the poor the I'm reading the chat. It's funny. Was OU going to run a 3-man line next year? Like offensive line next year. Who's going to pay for Jackson's ACL after he gets hurt with this offensive line? Blah blah blah. Like it. I it's kind of wild to me. Like, so let's throw this out here. everybody griped about Beanbo's recruiting in high school. Well, this cycle, he goes out and he lands the number 29 overall player in Eddie Pierre-Louis, a guy that's a potential 5-star when it's all said and done. He goes and lands the top offensive lineman at the Under Armour game. He lands one of the top offensive tackles that went out and showed out at the All American game. He lands another 4-star in Isaiah Autry, and he lands a top offensive lineman in the state of Oklahoma. Sure, he missed on Grant Briggs. Okay. Is what it is. But he landed 5 really good players. He's landed 3 linemen in the portal, of which, if you go and you look, Brown and Tarquin all had offers from numerous Power Fives, whether Florida, Texas A&M, you name it. They offered them. Auburn, all of them. They offered those guys. And it's not good enough. And then you got Fabici Nwewu, who was he was going to OU no matter what. But he's a former freshman All-American. And for the life of me, I get it. Like, the offensive line in the bowl game looked dicey. It was a makeshift offensive line that they had 10 days to kind of put together, essentially. And that's going to happen. But I think people need to stop looking at bowl results as the preface of how things are going to turn out in 2024, Parker. I just do. Like, that is such a bad way of doing things, because I can go back and look. OU lost in 1999 to Ole Miss in the Independence Bowl to finish 7-5. They were undefeated the next year. Oklahoma, I'm trying to think of other bowl games that they struggled in here that they turned 36-0 or 40-0, whatever it was, in 2014 to Clemson. The very next year, they go to the playoffs. So they were 6-7, lost to Florida State in 2022. They're 10-3 in 2023. So this whole notion of, well, they played bad in the bowl game, so those guys are going to stink. No, they've got 9 months to sync up. They've got 9 months to put together an offensive line. But they're going to go add some other pieces. It may not be Caden Proctor. It's not going to be Caden Proctor unless something drastically happens that's just shocking. Okay, like that's where that's at. But that doesn't mean they can't go grab a Garen Hatchett. They can't go grab Devontae Caleppo. They can't go grab a Parker Brailsford. Like, those guys are available. And if you can grab one of those 3, you're doing good. And there's also buzz that there's some other Arizona offensive linemen that may hit the portal.
Yeah. Well, and I think
so
what needs to be understood with, and this isn't unanimously the case, but this is, I would say, generally the case. At this point in time, if those guys get in the portal, the assumption has to be that they will be following their former head coach.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you just concede the battle, but that is what you expect to happen until something else objectively, tangibly materializes as real. You have to operate under the impression that you're working to coax them away from the coach that they committed to, which is a difficult thing to do.
Yeah. So there's this narrative, and it's being said here in the chat. OU never grabs anybody good in the portal, Parker. Never. Well,
I can think of
a guy. I can name a bunch.
I can think of a guy who's going to be off the board in day 2 of the NFL draft this year that came to Oklahoma via the transfer portal.
Tyler Guyton, Wanye Morris, Eric Gray, Jalen Hurts. And I know that was previous. I know that was previous times, but still was in the portal and came to Oklahoma. Let's go with Deion Burks, Deshaun McCullough, Walter Rouse, Andrew Anthony. Do I need to go on?
I
Like,
don't think you need to go on,
do I need to
Brandon.
go on? Like, do
I
put
think the
little
point has
poke
adequately
holes
been
in
made.
these narratives?
I think the point has more than adequately been made. Um, so let's shift our focus. We do have a junior day coming up. I'm sure we will talk about it next week as we continue to refine the visitor list with some of the confirmed visitors. We have a bunch confirmed right now up at ouinsider.com. There's a whole list. If you're a member over there, you know everybody that's going to be in town, confirmed coming to town as of right now on January 27th. No doubt there will be additions, there will be subtractions, there will be some fluctuation one way or the other in terms of the overall number of recruits that attend that January 27th junior day. But this every year, Brandon, is where we start to get a sense of who Oklahoma really, really wants. Because if you're among the invites to this junior day, if you're one of the guys to whom Oklahoma says, hey, come on up on January 27th, that's how you know you are coveted in Norman America.
Yeah, I mean, it is the top as far as who Oklahoma's looking at in 2025. And look, I don't think that's 100% on, like, as far as factual of, if they don't come on this junior day or they haven't been invited this junior day, then they're not. Because I know that and I'm going to have notes up on OU Insider here pretty soon. There's a few guys that they're bringing in the following weekend. Um, and there's few guys that they're going to bring in later on in March as well. That are very, very important to Oklahoma in the 2025 recruiting. And it's more so because these players have been to Oklahoma so much, and or they already made plans to do this or that previously before Oklahoma came out and said, hey, will you come to our junior day? So they already had previous plans, but they like Oklahoma enough. And I think Michael Fasusi, he's coming in March. Like, that is happening. He's coming to a March junior day. So everybody that's worried that he didn't plan in one of those 3 trips that he's going to, and they're freaking out, like, the reality is that Oklahoma's still at or near the top with him. And when I spoke to Fasusi, he said, look, I've been to Oklahoma, I think 7 or 8 times in the last year. Like, me going to that junior day is going and seeing the same stuff I've already seen over and over and over and over and over. He goes, but I will be back in March. I want to go see a practice and I want to do a junior day with them. But he would like to kill 2 birds, 1 stone, is what he said. So that is how Oklahoma is attacking the Michael Fasusi route, for those that are worried about that recruitment. He hasn't been to Texas A&M up until this past weekend. That he had been there, but it was a previous staff. And so they weren't really high on his board. I don't know that they are yet either still, but he wanted to go give him a look. He hasn't been to Oregon very much. I think he's been to Oregon once, I believe, if that. And so he's trying to get up there, and he's trying to get to Missouri because he hasn't really been there. And so those are the schools. And I know the fans here, those 3 schools, Parker, and they're like, oh my God. But but when you think of high school recruiting, Oklahoma generally holds their own in high school recruiting. There's a reason why they end up in the top 8, 6, 7, 8 every cycle. So I
Yeah,
don't
and
think that's something to
there'll be a
really worry
freak
about.
out. Just
Yeah,
expect it now.
yeah,
There will be a
there's going to
freak
be
out circa May or June before official visits happen, where there you get that segment of the fan base is going, oh my goodness, this class isn't going to live up to expectations. How is Oklahoma going to compete in the SEC if they can't swing with the heavy hitters in recruiting? It happens every single year, and
100%.
every single year Oklahoma ends up signing a top 10 class at worst, a top 5 class at best. So when the freak out happens, just understand, A, you've been warned, and B, it doesn't it, it doesn't hold water. none of the panic, none of the sense of panic from those fans. It's irrational. It doesn't make sense, and you shouldn't pay attention to it.
Yeah, look, the I think there's a lot of Texas trolls in here, which we expect. They're cleaning house with Blackshire, and look, I think Blackshire is a great player, but or I think he had the potential to be a great player. But if you're replacing Jalen Ford with Kendrick Blackshire,
Rolling the dice.
rolling the dice a little bit, a
Now,
little bit.
listen, I said it on the podcast. I'll say it again. To this day, I have never seen a more physically impressive high school football player than Kendrick Blackshire. He looked like an Olympic power lifter in high school. But
There's one other linebacker from that area that I think we
Kelvion
both
Riggins,
yeah, that we
yeah,
both feel like those are the only two that I could ever look at and go, wow. But
yeah.
anyways, go
But
ahead.
Kendrick Blackshire was highly impressive in high school to the naked eye. But that said, the last time I heard Kendrick Blackshire's name in any meaningful capacity was when he was in high school. So, not saying he's a bum. I don't know, man. Like, if he's coached properly, who knows what you get out of him with his single remaining year of eligibility. But there's a reason that there's a reason he couldn't crack it at Alabama. I guess I'll say that. And
Yeah.
it's because, yeah, you know what? He may be a good player, but you got to be a dog. You got to be on another level to see the field defensively for Alabama.
No doubt. And there's an argument going on in the chat that OU there's Jason has chimed in and said that OU there's been 6 corners that have hit the portal that OU should have gone after and they haven't.
Okay.
And my response is with what numbers? Like where is this available numbers coming from? Who's going to look these players in the OU already cut like 12 guys. School's about to start up. Who's going to look those kids in the eye and then call their parents and say, "Remember that promise, the scholarship we made for your son this spring and next fall? And I know school just started, but he needs to pack his stuff up because we're
Well,
making room for somebody else."
and
And this is
who
what
did Oklahoma lose at
yeah.
cornerback? Nobody. They didn't lose anybody at cornerback. They took Des Malone from the portal under the impression that Woody Washington was
Yeah.
going to the NFL because at that point he was. Lo and behold, Woody Washington is back for year 6, and you bring back pretty much every single cornerback that saw the field for you in a meaningful capacity last year.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no
And
there's no room at safety and corner right now. There's zero room. They're
no,
actually
and
3 or 4 over.
we were halfway entertaining the discussion yesterday, kind of with some advance notice that Caleb Downs was going to be getting in the transfer portal, and Brandon and I were on the phone going, "Well, I mean, you probably don't get him, but you make a run at Caleb Downs, and you can't make a run at a guy like Caleb Downs right now if you're Oklahoma, because at that point you run the risk of chasing off not just one but several dudes that could be a very critical component of your safety room in 2024. Like if you bring in Caleb Downs, do you jeopardize your security with Peyton Bowen? You jeopardize your security with Robert Spears Jennings? Like Oklahoma has no immediate need for secondary help. And
They
could the
said
second
because of number 90 defense, pass defense. Well, Parker, the and they said largely because of the defensive. No, it was largely because they couldn't get a pass rush because they were max protecting. And how long can corners and safeties hold up? I mean, that was literally stated by Venables and a number of other people that know the X's and O's game.
yeah, and
Um,
A in 2023, the secondary did a fantastic job ball hawking, creating turnovers.
yeah,
That is one thing that they excelled at. And then B, I would just like look situationally at what cost to Oklahoma in the games that they lost. When push came to shove, chips were down. You needed plays from that defensive backfield. Time and again, they made them. Like that Oklahoma State loss, that Kansas loss, certainly that Arizona loss. If you're pointing the finger at anything, it's certainly not the secondary.
No. Yeah, no, look, and on top of that, you had they brought in 2023, they brought in one of the top defensive back groupings in the country, if not the top, when you look at Jacoby Johnson, Makari Vickers, Josiah Wagner, Peyton Bowen, Eric McCarty. Trying to think who else. They had Day McCullough, but he's gone now. Who else did they bring in that I'm missing off the top of my head here in 2023? And these were all elite 4-star, 5-star guys. That's where where I'm looking at it going, okay, like relax. They were super young and had Gentry not gotten banged up before they got banged up, before he got banged up last year. He was leading the country in interceptions at one point. Was it like through the first 5 weeks, 6 weeks of the season? And Oklahoma was a really good pass defense at that point. Injuries. They were injured. Makari Vickers, Gentry, who else? Josiah Wagner.
Kenai Walker.
Kenai Walker got injured. And even Woody Washington was playing with a bum shoulder at the end of the year. So, like, got to take things in perspective is where I think Parker and I are at here. Like, you can't just go out there and by the way, go look. Everybody says mid-tier. Des Malone is not a mid-tier corner. Like, he gave up one touchdown in what, 400 plus pass attempts.
Yeah, well, and
Like,
group of 5 to power 5, like maybe there is an adjustment period for him. But guess what? The last group of 5 corner that the Sooners took in the transfer portal was a guy by the name of CJ Colden, and that one panned out. So
yeah, 5 interceptions. Yep.
don't discount Des Malone. Don't discount him.
Yep. And then look, the D line. I was talked about this on the podcast yesterday. They really love Jaden Jackson. Like, they love Jaden Jackson. What they saw in the bowl practices from every source I talked to, one source even said, if you could get Tyler, what am I thinking of here? Tyler from Clemson.
Davis, Tyler Davis.
Tyler Davis. I always get the last name confused. I always want to say Tyler Brown. Tyler Davis and Brian Breesy. If you could get those two in the same class, the source said that would be like getting Jaden Jackson and David Stone in the same class as far as strictly interior defensive linemen. And I thought that was a mouthful to say. But the source went on to say, look, with what everybody saw at the bowl practices with Jaden Jackson, they feel really comfortable with him backing up Dejon Terry. They do. They feel really comfortable. They think he's going to add the strength. He's going to add the weight that's needed. He's already close to the weight needed. He just needs to add that strength in the lower body and upper body. And they feel like they got 9 months to do that. And they think that he can be a load in that interior for Oklahoma. They said Grayson Holton is going to take another big step this next year. And they said it'll be the first time that Jacob Lacey has been able to go through a full offseason, because obviously last year he was in and out of the hospital and lost a lot of weight. So
I think the X factor in that room for me is Grayson Holton, because when he, especially early in the season in 2023, when he was on the field, he was making plays and he was disruptive. And look, the coaches see more of him on the practice field than we do. Certainly, no question about that. I don't question that there was a reason that he wasn't playing as much down the stretch as he was in the first half of the season. But any way you slice it, if he is somebody that can get measurably better over the next 9 months before the season kicks off, if he's somebody that can continue to pack on good weight, get stronger, get more dexterous, and learn his role, learn his assignments a little bit better, then that is somebody that is going to be able to drastically impact the value of Oklahoma's interior defensive line next year. And what always strikes me about Jaden Jackson, man, is that, it's one thing when you have that one fan on the message board that just has a man crush on a particular player and just will not stop talking about him and how underrated he is and how he needs more attention. Like it's something you see on message boards, but I don't know that I have ever seen more members over at OUinsider.com just thoroughly enamored. And we got a lot of people that watch tape. We got a lot of people that do their homework on the recruits that Oklahoma's bringing in. And I don't know if I've ever seen this many people so enamored with a recruit as Jaden Jackson. I mean, if I could count the amount of times I've seen a post or a comment on another post or anybody on the board saying, yo, Jaden Jackson is criminally underrated. And that dude is going to be a menace for Oklahoma. It's those posts are everywhere. That opinion is everywhere. And so it's almost like it is a hotter take to say that Jaden Jackson isn't all that he's cracked up to be than to say that he is criminally underrated and undervalued as a recruit. So again, hearing encouraging things about Jackson from sources just kind of confirms our collective intuition on the kid, which is that he's somebody that certainly has the opportunity and has the ability to outperform his recruiting ranking once he gets on the field as a Sooner.
Yeah, and I think the funny thing is there's a lot of analysts out there. Our own John Garcia is like hugely high on Jaden Jackson.
Yeah, he's a Jaden Jackson OG. He's been on that train a while.
And so he's been very, very vocal about it. I think another, a player on the defensive line and State 5 Stinks has talked about it throughout the chat, and I'm trying to like keep up with it for everybody here. Is Caden Woolard. And he's an underrated guy. Obviously, he's a 4-star. He's one of the top D-line prospects that came out of the portal this cycle, period. No ifs, ands, or buts. So you can add that to the other, we don't ever get good players out of the portal type deal. The dude only had 10 sacks last year and led the MAC in sacks and had everybody in their dog after that guy. By the way, the dude had so many offers.
Well,
I spoke, he's like, dude, I haven't even posted half my offers.
Yeah.
And so, which I thought was interesting. I mean,
he stopped posting them after Oklahoma.
Elite SEC schools. Like anybody was okay. He had the one he wanted, and that's where he was going. Well, and so go ahead.
Here's what everybody seems to miss about the Sooners' pursuit of Caden Woolard, who obviously, all MAC guy, 9.5 sacks as a junior in 2023. But anybody that's downplaying that addition, what they seem to miss is that Oklahoma really didn't have an apparent glaring need for another defensive end via the transfer portal. And so if they were going to take one, it was going to be a dude that they believed could step in and immediately make the Sooners substantially better in that department. That's why the only two guys they really pursued were Woolard and Nick Scorton from Purdue.
And Scorton was from basically College Station, Texas, so he's going to A&M from the jump.
Correct. And so that, to me, speaks more highly of Caden Woolard than anything else. The fact that, and who knows if he didn't post all his offers, who knows who else wanted him. But what speaks more highly than anything else to me about Caden Woolard is the fact that Oklahoma didn't need another defensive end, but they felt like they needed him.
Yeah. And I think that's the interesting part because they return Ethan Downs, they return R. Mason Thomas, they return PJ Adibara, and then they return trying to think who else they return. They return a bunch on the DN. And obviously they were I think Taylor Wine. And then who else am I missing here? That's coming back next year. Parker, help me out here.
Did you already mention Trace Ford?
Trace Ford. There you go. Trace Ford. Like there's like 6 guys they returning and they still went and were like, yeah, we'll take a seventh, you know? And not to mention they've got Nigel Smith coming in. They have, um, man, I'm trying to think of everybody they
Nate
got.
Okoye and Wyatt Gilmore.
Yeah, Wyatt Gilmore. Yep. And then obviously Danny Okoye. So Wyatt Gilmore is where I was stumped at. So like you've got what, 10 guys now on the edge? Like that's a lot of dudes at one position. And so that's where I believe that, it's they've recruited really well. And the funny thing is they've got a couple of guys that they have the frame. If they have to, they can beef them up a little bit, get them to 280, 295, that type of area, and kind of be one of those type of guys that can slide inside and outside. Nigel Smith is one of those guys. I think that he is going to be a good 280 by the start of the season. He's what, 265 already. And that to me is says a lot about where they are as a program at the defensive line compared to where they were when they arrived. And the
Our
source that I
Mason
talked to,
Thomas showed up in June of 2022 at 216 pounds.
yeah, and he's 245 right now, almost 250. So the the funny thing is that same source I was talking about earlier in regards to Jaden Jackson said this is the type of defensive line room that the staff is used to. When they walk in there, that's the type of talent they're used to looking at when they're going through film and going over stuff. They may not have the experience that their predecessors did in 22 and 23, but when it comes to overall talent, it's not close. It's not even close. Like they are recruiting at an elite level at defensive line. And then when you flip over to the offensive line side, look, we're not going to sit there and tell you that it's all, you know, peaches over there. Like that's just not where it's at. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. But the one thing I will add is that you've got Spencer Brown, who's played tons and tons of football, right? Against Michigan, against Ohio State, and against whoever else. You've got you got Jacob Sexton, who has all the talent in the world, and everybody I talk to still thinks that he's, a potential day 2 type pick on the offensive line. And if he can improve over the next 3 seasons, maybe even slide into that day 1 type deal. You've got Everett, who has been an all freshman guy. You got Fabici Noawu, who's a freshman All American. Like, there is some talent there. Now, I get the depth part. It's kind of scary. Do you want to rely on Eddie Pierre-Louis? Do you want to rely on BJ Brooks? Do you want to rely on Danny Akinkumi? Do you want to rely on guys that don't have a lot of experience? Well, you're going to have to either way, one way or the other. Like, that's just the reality situation. But the one thing you can take solace in is that the guys that you're talking about backing up, like the Tarquins of the world and the I guess this Spencer Browns of the world and the Sextons of the world, are Jake Taylor, who was top 150 player in the country, Akin Kumi, who was probably a 4-star, BJ Brooks, who will probably be a top 100 player in the country when it's all said and done, and Eddie Pierre-Louis, who potentially could be what? He's a number 29 overall player on Rivals right now. He could be a 5-star when it's all said and done. They do the final 5 stars. I don't know that he will be, but he's very close, definitely on the fringe. And then you've got Josh Bates at center. But he's obviously going to compete with Everett. So you're either going to have Everett or Josh Bates at center, both of whom are super talented centers. So you're lacking experience. The good news is you've got 3 games before you play an SEC school to start getting some of that experience. Look, they got a long ways to go. But it's not like just the crap show that some people want to say that it is. It could be way worse. It could be way. I've seen some I've seen some shitty offensive lines in my lifetime as an OU fan back in the day. And this ain't one of them. This ain't one of them. I promise you that. They were bad. I think some of y'all that have lived through the 90s and that 2000, does anyone remember 2001 offensive line? Nate Hibble just got lit every time he dropped back to pass. They started what, 4 freshmen? And then they were the best offensive line in the country come 2004. But they still won double-digit games. And that was back when the Big 12, Parker, was the SEC of today. That's when Nebraska and Colorado and Missouri and Kansas and Texas A&M and Texas and Oklahoma State and Texas Tech, they were good teams back then, like really good teams. So this is, and Kansas State. Oh, don't even forget Kansas. Oh, yeah, Kansas State. Kansas State was dominant back then. So, like, this is it's not unheard of territory. And the good news is you got the top developer in college football leading the way. I think that's the other thing you can take solace. I get being upset, Parker. I really do. I get being upset that they're not going out and grabbing Caden Proctor and all that. I'm with y'all. I get it. That would be nice. That would be fun. You know how great that would be for our business? Can you imagine landing the top offensive line prospect in the portal like that? That's good for our business. So we want to see that type of stuff happen. But it is what it is. There's not much you can do. You can just hope that they develop and they do their job. Okay, as things sit today, Parker. As things sit today, you look at the roster as it's assimilated right now, and you know things are going to change come spring. There's going to be additions and subtractions through the portal, right? We know that's going to happen. Floor, ceiling, what do you got record-wise?
Floor is 7 wins. Ceiling is, I'll say 10 wins.
Yeah, see,
I'm fair.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm 7-5, 10-2. That's where I'm at. And if you get 10-2,
no, I take that back. I think the ceiling is 11 because of the turnover at Alabama. And if it's Nick Saban's Alabama that the Sooners have to go up against, what I would say is I'd almost kind of unconsciously put that one in the loss column. And I'd say, okay, 10 wins is your ceiling. But because you get Kalen DeBoer's Alabama Crimson Tide at home, no less, I'll say in a darn near perfect world, the ceiling is 11 wins.
oof. I can't go 11. I'm sorry. 7-5, 10-2. But I think if you win 9 with OU's record, if they're 9-3, I think they make the playoffs. Just because
my expectation is 10 wins. I'll say that. My expectation is 10.
My expectation is 9-3. And again, like I said, you're 9-3 with that schedule. The committee is going to put OU in the playoffs because that is outside of Florida. I don't think there's anybody in the country that has a schedule like Oklahoma. Think about it. Your non-con is Houston with Willie Fritz coaching there now, Tulane with Willie Fritz as players, right? Like, and the program that he built, and Maine. And who was the other one that I'm missing? There's a game one.
Temple is game one.
Yeah, Temple doesn't count. But Temple and Maine, you throw them out there, but they've got 10 games versus potentially ranked teams all the way through. Like that's the reality. Like potentially outside of Maine and Temple, you could play a ranked opponent throughout the whole schedule. By the end of the season, like every one of those teams could be ranked somewhere in the top 25, is my point. And so it would be really hard if they go and they beat Alabama. If they go in, and I don't know what Alabama's going to be now that everybody's leaving the program. Like, I don't know. But the name still counts, right? You go to Ole Miss and you win. You go to Missouri and win. And then say you slip up against Texas and I don't know who else. 2 other teams.
I would say
I,
the
I
most losable games on the schedule are Ole Miss and LSU, especially because they're both on the road.
yeah, LSU, because there's two losses there. And then the typical surprise loss that Oklahoma throws out there, like they did Kansas this year. So, um, I think with that, you go 9-3. I think you're in the playoffs still. I just can't imagine the committee going, "Oh man, well they beat all these top 25 teams. No way they get in." No, I would think you would get in. Would you not? Would you not agree? Like 9 wins up with the schedule, you're probably going to make the playoffs. With the 12, it's 12 teams now.
No, no, I don't think. Well, you're on the bubble. I'll say that.
For sure. For
You're
sure.
on the bubble, and
You're
probably
not
comes
getting a
down
home game. You're not
it
getting a home game.
probably
That's for
comes
sure.
down to what happens in the conference championship games as to whether or not you make the playoff field at that point. Because it is, like, I do think it will be looked upon as one of the tougher schedules in America. I don't know about toughest, but definitely one of the tougher. And so if you can put yourself on bubble territory, strength of schedule is going to work in your favor. But ultimately, I think a lot of it is going to come down on what happens on conference championship week. And you get bid thieves in the NCAA tournament every March. Well,
True.
you're gonna have bid
True.
thieves in the college football playoff too.
Yeah, that's true. Because you're gonna have some surprise college champions, college, conference champs. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, they're right. I still like. There's some people like floor 6, ceiling 8. Like I get it, and there's this section of the fan base that doesn't want to get their hopes up and watch it crush. So they always like have the lowest expectation possible. So they're never hurt. They're always surprised and happy. And then you've got the ones that just prop themselves up and they're like 12-0, 11 wins. Like they're just like that's always their expectation. And then when crap happens, they're like, we suck. Like there's it's always one extreme to the other. And there's not a lot of middle ground in fanaticism. So, like I said, 7 floor, 9 ceiling for me, probably. And I know, well, no, 10 ceiling, but I expect 9-3. Like that's my expectations. And look, if they win more than 9 games this year, if they win 9 games, Parker, would you consider that a successful season? Year one in the SEC. Getting used to the day-to-day grind. They haven't been used to that since 2010 in the Big 12.
I I feel like that would be I wouldn't quantify it as unsuccessful, but
No,
I don't
Blake
know that I
Horton
would
just
call it
said.
successful either. Successful to me is 10 wins.
Blake Horton
Successful to
just
me is
said
10
what I
wins.
said, dude. Some people have set their bar so low so they can be happy. And Blake Horton goes, I'm 6-6, so if we're good, I can be happy. That's a prime example. That is hilarious. I love it. At least he's honest. At least he's honest. Um, no, so you don't think 9-3 is a good year?
I
Year one.
think it is I think it is
An
the
okay
year
year.
commensurate with consensus expectations. To me, 10
Now,
wins is successful. 9 wins is on par with expectations.
with what we expect the 2025 class to be, and it will be 4 straight, probably top 8 classes, right? If they don't contend to at least make the semifinals in a 12-team playoff in 2025, that will be a disappointing season to me. Would you agree with that?
Yeah,
As
I think
things
so.
are assimilated as what we expect to happen in the 2025 recruiting, right? And the fact that OU really doesn't lose, they portal wise, they don't lose players unless BD processes them out. That's the reality. Like outside of Caden Green, like there really isn't a surprise person that left this year. Like you knew at the end of the year that person, that person, that person, that person, that person was going to be processed out. Like that's just how they were making room for more talent. And knowing that, I expect Oklahoma to be challenging for at least the semis and potential national title in 25. I think 2025 is a year that fans should have the ultimate of expectations. You don't agree with that?
Well, I I don't know if I agree with it or not yet. And I am okay admitting that I'm not really sure what the future of Oklahoma football is going to look like a year from now. And while, I think obviously you have some things to look forward to in 2025, i.e., year two of Jackson Arnold as the starter, ideally a lot more experience going into the season on the offensive line, uh, some linebackers that at that point will have a lot of seasoning and a secondary that's going to be quite mature. You're also not going to have Danny Stutzman. You won't have
Yeah.
Billy Bowman. You won't have Woody Washington. You won't have Andrell Anthony or Jalil. Like you'll have guys to replace, is I guess what I'm saying. And so before I know how Oklahoma plugs those holes, as it were, I I'm not going to try and throw a dart and figure what expectations are going to be heading into 2025 because it may be a completely different conversation next year at this time.
I guess that's fair. I'm just going off of what we've seen over the last few years. And I get you have to replace those players, but like I said, the way they've recruited, the talent they've got in the program right now, as long as you can hold on to them, I don't see why you can't be competing for a natty in 25. I guess I don't see why you can't be competing for a natty in 2024, but it's going to take some work. And I think the only thing holding them back is the offensive line. Will it mesh? Because outside of that, you look at the roster across the board, and you're like experience and talent
Yep.
everywhere,
No, I agree
except
with
for
you.
offensive line.
I agree with you. That
But the
offensive
talent's
line
there on O
is,
line. The talent's there on O
yeah,
line. It's
yeah.
just they got to mesh, obviously.
That offensive line is the question mark. And I will say this,
Yeah.
Brandon, uh, that to me is best case scenario or should be for Oklahoma fans. If there is one position, like if you have to have a question mark at a specific position group, offensive line, at least for me, is the position group where I would like to have the question mark because
Right.
I trust Bill Beaton most.
Yeah, and somebody said I love how you just gloss over green. No, the green. There's not much more we can say about that. Like, oh, you offered just as much as everybody else, if not more, and they still
They
dipped
gave him
out.
what he wanted.
It gave him exactly what he wanted and more, and dipped out still. So, um, that's where the NIL, the anti NIL or how OU does NIL people. There's nothing you can really say to that. Like they played the game, and the kid still left. So, um, I there was something I just saw just a second ago. I thought was Lincoln Cure. Somebody said Lincoln Cure is not going to Oklahoma. Thoughts on that? Do you think Oklahoma has a good chance to land him?
Yes, they have a chance to land him, and
I said good. There is an adjective in there.
I'm not going to be definitive right now. I'm not going to tell you that they get him. I'm also not going to tell you that they don't. It's that kid hasn't even begun to narrow it down yet. He's got kind of an unofficial list of favorites, but as he visits more campuses, guess what? Those favorites are going to change. That list will evolve. What
Mhm.
I know is that he grew up rooting for Oklahoma and Oregon. Those were his two favorite schools as a child. He's from Goodland, Kansas. He didn't grow up right down the street from a major Power Five football program that he could attach himself to. So he was kind of a bandwagon. He liked Baker Mayfield in Oklahoma, and he liked the Oregon Ducks. And so,
Everybody's an
yeah,
Oregon Ducks fan growing up because of the jerseys.
yeah. And that gives Oklahoma and something of a leg up. Does is it significant? I don't know. Well, it is significant. I don't know how significant, but they're going to have a shot at Lincoln Cure. They're going to have just as good a shot as anybody in that race. They may get him, they may not. I don't think anybody ought to be definitive right now with Lincoln Cures coming to Oklahoma or Lincoln Cures not coming to Oklahoma. No, what we know for the moment is that Oklahoma is very high on the kid. Brent Venables was out there in Goodland yesterday visiting with him, and they're going to do what they can to get him to Norman.
Yeah.
Time will tell.
And look, there's before we get out of here, there's questions about obviously Hurd, um, and Nate Roberts. Why does Nate Roberts hate OU so much? Is one of the comments. And the other one was, are you at least going to tell me something about Hurd? I guess I'll start with the Nate Roberts part. I still feel like Oklahoma's in a decent spot. I know that there's been some crystal balls thrown out there to Ohio State. And I told Parker this the other day. I was like, this just reminds me of Peyton Bowen's situation so much. Like everybody has their own little ideology of where this kid's going to go and why the kid's going to go a certain place. And then when you talk to people in Norman, there's just this confidence. Like, yeah, we'll see. You know, that's the quote I always get back. We'll see, like shrugging it off, like, okay, whatever. Like, it's January. We'll believe that when we see it. And if it comes across that way, looks like we'll have to flip him, you know, type deal. Like, so there's not like this big, obviously they want him because he's the top tight end, right? Like in the state of Oklahoma. And he's right down the road. And his brother's playing at OU this season. So there is a big um opportunity for Oklahoma. The one thing you've got to remember is that 90% of the Saturdays this fall, guess where he's going to be? Wherever Jake's playing and OU's playing. So that's something people need to also take into consideration. There's going to be a lot of trips to Norman, a lot of being around the program, a lot of getting to know guys. And then on top of that, he's going to continue to get to know Kevin Sperry and all the Oklahoma commits. If he's the only guy of all the offers that's not committed to Oklahoma at some point down the road, there's going to be some pressure on him to do that. No matter if he's committed to Ohio State or whoever, Oregon or whatever. Like that, at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of pressure. Like, why are you the outcast? Why are you the one guy that decided not to go to Oklahoma out of this top class that Oklahoma finally has in 2025? So, uh, Parker, I don't know your thoughts on it, but then on the Hurd thing, sometimes it's just not worth it. And when I mean not worth it, I'm financially not worth it.
Yes. Yes.
And I'll throw that out
at this
there.
point, it's not worth it.
No, no.
It's not worth it.
All right. Anyways, go ahead.
No, that's all.
Well, I mean the Nate Roberts part. Your thoughts on that part?
Yeah, I mean, the Ohio State smoke isn't nothing.
No.
And people in the Switzer Center are aware of it, and they're not dismissing it. I'm not dismissing it. And I don't know what the is that he's going to be a Sooner. I think there are enough reasons for him to pick Oklahoma. I think there's there are reasons why Oklahoma makes the most sense for Nate Roberts. And we'll continue to unpack that as we continue to cover his recruitment in the months to come. But we're a long way off from a decision. Probably doesn't come anytime soon. And Oklahoma has some very natural advantages that are just baked into the pie and that they're going to be difficult for other schools to overcome. Not impossible to overcome. We've been surprised before. Recruiting will surprise you from time to time. It's kind of reminiscent of the Peyton Pierce recruitment in a certain way. That's that one. The narrative arc of the Peyton Pierce recruitment is very similar to the Nate Roberts one. And will the outcome be identical? I don't know, but I have my reasons to think it's going to be Oklahoma. As you mentioned, the folks in the Switzer Center don't seem to be all too worried right now. They're aware of the noise. And again, nobody's dismissing it, but they're not all too worried. And so let's let's see what the next few months brings. Let's see what his official visit slate looks like, and let's see if his peers can lasso him, as it were, and bring him on home with them. Because pretty much every single elite dude in the state of Oklahoma, with the exception of Tristan Haynes, CJ Nixon, and Nate Roberts, all those guys are committed to Oklahoma. And so that's going to make it difficult for those three dudes to say no to OU in the end. Again, not impossible, but difficult. Do you want to be the odd man out? That's the question that those guys, Kevin Sperry and his crew, are no doubt going to pose to Nate and Tristan and CJ as winter turns to spring.
Yeah, no doubt. How many commits do you think out of this junior day coming up? One, two?
I'll say one.
Yeah,
I'll say they get. My expectations aren't too high.
Not mine either. It's just the way that recruiting goes these days. I think generally most will roll into spring and or at least February, March, April, I think is where some of these will the players that visit on that junior day, there will be a few commits here or there. And I think Oklahoma has what? How many commits? What, 9, 10 already in 25? Something like that. I can't
9
remember
commits
that.
right now.
Yeah,
6
nine.
of them
Yeah,
from
9.
Oklahoma.
Yeah. So I mean, like any addition is going to be significant as far as the rankings and all that goes because of where Oklahoma's already way ahead of the game compared to a lot of schools right now in 2025 because of how good the in-state class is. So, yeah, one's probably where I would set I guess I would do 1.5 just to kind of set the marker, and I would take the under. Just make it 1, that's how I would go with that one. All right. That's going to do it. Oh, here, Jason, real quick. I'll answer this question. Will Oklahoma land any 5 stars this cycle? He's talking about 2025. Yes. I generally believe they will land 2 or 3. Would you agree with that, Parker?
I'll say they get 2. I'll say they get 2 5-stars. 2 5-stars. And that was my prediction for 2024 as well. They've got 1 for now in David Stone. We'll see if EPL gets that fifth star as well.
Tatum's a consensus.
Well, I guess, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay. So
they got
semantics,
2.
but yeah, I'll say they get 2. I'll say they get 2.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. Look, if you add 2 to the 2025 cycle, and let's say for kicks and giggles, Eddie Pierre-Louis gets it. So you've got 3 in 24, 3 in 23. You've got 8 in the last 3 cycles. That is more than any OU roster has had in ever. Like, I can't remember 8 5-stars being on a roster.
Texas
I
A&M?
can't. No, at OU.
Oh, at OU. Yeah.
I think that's be the most ever. I think 6 might be the most after the 2024 class gets there. I think that's interesting between 23, 24. Is there a 5-star on the 2022 class? Was there a 5-star?
2022, no, there was no 5-star.
No, in the 2021.
Gentry was the highest ranked commit, I think.
And then obviously the 2021. Yeah, the 5 stars gone. Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, but look, if you can have 8 by the time 2025 rolls around, that's a pretty legit roster you got there. So anyways, all right, that's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners YouTube Live. I almost said podcast. If you're not subscribed to this YouTube channel, subscribe. A lot of coverage of basketball, softball's coming up. We're going to have that covered for you. We've got a lot of football coverage, a lot of really creative football coverage, breaking down Zach Alley and how he, I guess, how he calls plays, how he uses Venables defense at Jacksonville State, at Louisiana Monroe, and just a lot of things about Zach Alley that you guys will like. We're going to break down. We're going to have recruits interviews on here. And we're going to have a lot of really cool content coming for you guys. And again, creative content as far as football goes. We got really good basketball coverage, softball, baseball, all that's going to be right here on this YouTube channel as the offseason rolls around. And spring ball is not too far away. Crazy to think it is literally a little under 2 months away when they finally get started with spring practice. So, Parker, if you guys aren't subscribed to this YouTube channel, you're missing out because there's going to be so much content coming your way March through, obviously, the whole SEC football season. Also, OU Insider, we're going to have that junior day covered like crazy. Parker and I will be at all of the 7-on-7, big 7-on-7 events, all of the Under Armour events, all the rivals camps. We're going to have all those things covered for you. Florida, Georgia, and OU is offering like crazy in the Peach State right now. Like I think they had 4 or 5 offers today. Expect more over the next few weeks. I think they're going to really try to throw their hat now that they're in the SEC, in the Peach State, in Alabama, in South Carolina. Florida obviously is a place that's a staple for Oklahoma. And we're going to be out there seeing all that top talent that Oklahoma is going after. And we're going to bring back that information to you on OU Insider VIP. We're going to all the camps in California. We're going to the 7-on-7 events in Las Vegas and LA and all that type of stuff to make sure you guys have the best coverage of where all the top talent's going to be, of all the top recruits, all the 4- or 5-star offers Oklahoma has. We're going to have updates for you guys constantly on OU Insider VIP. So if you're not there, you're missing out. You got the basketball coverage, softball coverage, baseball coverage, recruiting, transfer portal, spring practice, all the official, unofficial visits taking place at junior days. We have all that for you on OU Insider VIP. $9.99 a month right now, or $99.95 gets you a whole year, which means you'll get all the way through the inaugural SEC season. All right. That's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live. For Parker Thune, for Spencer Forsythe, my name is Brandon Drum. You guys have a blessed day.